Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Danny Ravid, and I really appreciate you coming here to my session, especially since you have, I have formidable competitors. And first I'll ask you a question, whoever tried to do TDE? Okay, who tried to do TDE with Azure Key Vault? Who succeeded? Good. So if I made mistakes, please correct me. Okay. So in our company, eToro, which is a social trading company, if one want to ask me, I'll be happy to share with you later what our company do. But at least I have three shirts here. If one asks intelligent questions, he might get a T-shirt. Okay. So as first, please silence your cell phones. That will be helpful for all of us. And I'm working with SQL Server for over 25 years. I mean, it means if you want to know how old I am, it's meant SQL Server 4.2, which was first publicly released version. I don't think there is anyone here that worked with this version. Yeah, this guy? Oh, come on, man. I'm trying to be, oldest guy in the room. Okay, so there is one guy here. Anyway, I did it all. I did the project, I did administration, I did everything you can imagine with SQL Server, other databases, OLTP data warehouse. And security is a hobby of mine, or I'm a little bit geeky about it. And TDE is transparent data encryption. Basically, in one word, it encrypts the files in place on your drives, whatever it resides, Azure, not Azure, okay? We are talking about database. You can activate TDE on a SQL Pass database with no intervention of your own. I'm talking about databases which are on virtual machines or on-premise. And you have to follow. Basically, we don't want to do TDE, okay? Means why? Because it gives us another work to do, and we are DBAs and we're very busy, and we don't know why the hell we need to encrypt the files, and et cetera, et cetera. And, but regulation is very strict, and this is a very, very small part of regulatory requirements, which means you have to, on rest, you have to encrypt your data. So it means if someone steals your files, you cannot restore the database without having the key that encrypts them in the first place. Okay? So you have in SQL Server, you have TDE, which basically you can use a key to encrypt the data inside the database. Unfortunately, this is all data that is encrypted with keys that you create yourself inside the database are keys that are basically hackable. It means if you want, you can go, for instance, see this video, which is on the slide in YouTube, and you can see that this, eventually, if you see this, all the turtles here, basically, if you go from the bottom to the top, basically after that, you'll get clear text from your database. So the keys must be stored somewhere on the system. It's not stored in SQL Server, even though SQL Server uses the service master key to encrypt it. I'm not going inside now why and how to decrypt. You can see the video. The video is very how you can put the hammer on your head. Okay, it just copies the files and decrypt the database. So you have other options. You can use Azure Key Vault, as we are going to talk about now, or another extensible key manager. But today we talk about Azure Key Vault. So I'm going to show from start to finish how you can encrypt SQL Server using an Azure Key Vault from the start to finish with all the pitfalls and problems that they have, and they have quite a few. Okay? And we will do whatever DBA need to do. We'll encrypt the database. We'll key rotate. It means that, there is expiration for keys. It depends on your security requirements of your CICO, or whatever policy you have in your company, or you don't have a policy. But anyway, it's a common interest to replace the key once in a year, for instance, or even less. So we will practice key rotation. We see everything, how we do it with Azure Key Vault, and we also talk about few pitfalls that are very, very dangerous if you don't know them. We also talk about how you do it in AlwaysON environment. Who here use AlwaysON? Well, almost 80–90%. So we'll talk about how you do it in AlwaysON when you have few servers and you have a database in a AlwaysON group that you need to encrypt, and then you have some things you need to do to make sure that everything works fine. So let's start. Before I start, any questions or? No, thank you. Okay, so Azure Key Vault is basically a store. It's a vault. Yeah, it's just to make the name sound good, as secured which it is. It's a place where you store your keys, okay, and you use your application. In this case, our application is Management Studio, SQL Server itself, okay, where we store the keys, with them we want to store the data, and these keys eventually are stored inside HSM, sorry. Who knows what HSM is? Yeah, what it means that basically it's like the chip on my credit card. It is not possible to hack it because it's physically protected. You have to, even if you obtain it, you can't retrieve the keys from there. So basically everything in Azure Key Vault terminates eventually in HSM. What is great about Key Vault, that the key creator does not have to be connected with the app owner. Means you can encrypt data on your SQL Server, and someone else will create the key and will give you a way to use this key inside SQL Server. Okay? In our presentation, we'll see both. Okay? We'll see both sides. I'll show you the part where you create the vault and you assign all necessary things for you to encrypt the database. So there can be many users for the same key vault, or there can be many key vaults with many applications, or there can be a multi-tenant app, like you create an application for your users. Each user or each customer has its own key, and you can use all these keys transparently to your application. Okay? That's the essence of Key Vault. It's very easy to set up, it's very powerful, and it's very secured. Okay? So that's the essence of Key Vault. So as I said, I can use the key, I can't see it. So there is a separation of duties which is so important. So this separation of duties means that the one in IT who is responsible for security, or the security team, can create a key for you, give you permission to access, and you don't have to know the key at all. That's the greatness about it. Okay. But I'm going to show you both sides because I want to show you where you can see if your security guy said it correctly. So let's see which objects we have in our process. So what we need to know. So there is a thing that called a secret. A secret is just a definition. It means it can be anything. It can be connections key in a PFX file from a private key, AES encryption key, everything you want to use with the key. It's not the key itself. Okay, you can set a key, you can create a secret for a key, which this what SQL Server uses for identify the application actually, or sorry, this is the way the Key Vault binds application to keys. We'll see that in the presentation. And of course the Key Vault itself, which contains many, many keys as you want. And all of them are managed together, but they don't have to be related to the same application or anything else. So we have also, of course, we have Azure Subscription Resource Group and Azure Active Directory identities. You cannot create a connection, or you cannot encrypt the TDE encryption with the Azure Key Vault without having an Azure Active Directory user binded to the user you use. Okay? So this user must exist in Azure Active Directory, otherwise you just can't do that. There is also some limitation other, that's why we make this presentation.
Sorry.
Yes?
You just say that any keys in the Azure Key Vault can only be used by a member of Azure Active Directory?
Sorry?
Any keys in Azure Key Vault can be used by only an account in Azure Active Directory?
Yeah. Active Directory account ID. You have to have account ID.
Be synced from on-prem Active Directory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So good question, because actually that is what we are doing. We are basically connecting in our organization, we're connecting the user on-prem to the Azure Active Directory. That's the way, and then it works, okay? But you can't use local users which are not domain users. Okay, the thing we need to remember that Azure, that Key Vault is very simple object model. It has a lot of things in Azure. It is created under a resource group. It has a secret, which we talked about, and a key. Very simple. However, you see there is, under that there is versions, yeah? So the rule is, if, and I will try to explain it later, of course, you never version a key or a secret that you created for encryption of TDE in SQL Server. The implication can be, well, I could say that unpleasant, if I say the least. So you never saw that, for instance, we discovered this when we created a new version instead of creating a new key. So if you want to rotate a key, if you want to have replace the key for encryption, you have to create a new key. Never create a new version. Okay? We'll see it in a little bit. Okay, so eventually I said when we talk about that, the Key Vault actually protects its keys inside hardware security models. That is, of course, correct. However, it is possible when you create a key to tell it software protected key. But the issue is that it's much faster to wait. If you create a lot of keys, it's much faster. So it means I can create software protected key when I choose to create the key. It will be faster than using HSM. And that's a way for Microsoft to give you a better experience of user interface. It doesn't mean eventually that the key is not protected, okay? If you can say there is rules for what can be saved and what not. There is a lot of algorithms used. So basically, there is in the HSM itself, it actually creates the key of creates the private key inside the hardware security model. It is possible. It means it has a CPU, and it creates the key, and it's not, you cannot view the process when it creates the key. That's for geeks. It means that actually you are protected also from someone trying to hack while you create the key. So if you're a company, you know, if you have compliance that you have to do this way, when you have to do it this way, who knows which type to use is usually the security guys. But I'll show you where you define that in Azure. Any questions? No. So, and eventually everything in Azure Key Vault, or everything when you connect from SQL Server or an application to Key Vault is eventually depends on authorization. So there is two types of authorizations. So offline authorization, it means, okay, is meaning, okay, who can access the keys? Which identity can do what? Means can I create a key? Can I encrypt the key? Can I decrypt the key? Or I can just get the key, okay? All this is set up when you create the authorization or the access patterns for your Key Vault and keys. But there is something very important that you remember, because we will see the effect of it later. It's at runtime. So eventually, when I access the Key Vault, I have to do it while, for instance, I'm encrypting a database, or when I'm starting SQL database that is encrypted. I have to get the key. Okay, so then at runtime I'm authorized or not, which can be very annoying when your database production doesn't come up because you can't authenticate to Azure Key Vault. So that's, for instance, the meaning if you don't have your Key Vault available when you're doing TDE. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my machine. And what I'm going to show now is I'm going to go to okay, I'm here in the portal of our testing environment, and I've already created. First, I'm going to show you what I already created, then we will create from scratch. So I have a Key Vault here that has, which I created, and it has under this subscription, and it has these keys. So if I press keys here, okay, it should, it's a little bit slow. So I created two keys, one key that I'm going to use later for encryption, and one key when I will try to simulate a key rotation, I will use this key. Okay, I've pre-created them. And if you want to see, I've defined access policies. So basically you can see that I created the key vault, so I am the authorized automatically. And I have something called application. So application basically is the mechanism, okay, which you connect between Azure and SQL Server via permission given to an application, which is basically, we'll see in a minute, is a virtual name with some properties that we need to set up. Okay, it means that basically through the application itself, so I'm going to simulate, go for this application, or let's write it here and show you. So, app registrations. So you create an application through app registrations. So I'm going to app registrations. And you will see a lot of, okay, and you see this is past 2019. It's a different icon here, but it's the same. So the question is, how do I now tell the Azure Key Vault that I'm connecting and I have the permission to use the keys in the Key Vault? So problem is that Microsoft tried to complicate it, for my opinion, from, these guys in SQL Server, anyway, they don't know what they're doing, so let's make it very, very difficult to understand how to do it. But you have to remember two things, okay? You have to remember this thing that calls client ID, okay? You can copy it, and this is very important. And the final thing, which is a secret. So when you create an application registration, you can create a secret. In my case, you can see my secret string. Okay, and this value, you see, what do you see? By the way, you can see that, or it's too small? So, all with stars. It is not available. It's only available when you create the secret. So if you don't copy it somewhere, then you have to delete and start all over again. Okay? So this is the mechanism of protection. Okay? And then what we do later with that, I will explain later. Okay? But let's try, just for purposes of demonstrations, let's try to create a new app registration. So it's very easy. I'm going to create it pass 2019 demo 1. And I'm going to set counter regression directory only. And I'm going to say register. So by the way, this requires high permission, which you probably in your company you will not have. But what I'm trying to show you here, how to debug it to help with the IT guys or security guys. If they do it and don't understand why they're doing it, then you can help them set it up correctly. So after I created you see I have an application ID, just a thing. I created just with a name. It has nothing. And the only thing left for me to do is go to the certificates and create a new client secret, okay? So this is, I call it my secret demo 1, and I'm saying it will never expire, and I'm just pressing add, and it goes to a batch process which will create, hopefully very soon, the secret. And it worked faster last time. I'm going through the public network here, so it's your fault. Okay, you see what's written here. Copy the new client secret value. You won't be able to retrieve it after you perform another operation or you leave this blade. Okay, so now I can use it, copy it. Okay, and then I'm gonna use Notepad. Yeah, Notepad, it's the most important tool you can use in this TDE. And what do I do with this? No, that's not enough. So what Microsoft said, okay, the secret will be that if I connect my application to SQL Server, will be a combination of what? Anyone knows?
Application.
Yeah, or basically if I go to the back to overview, it will be the application client ID. And where you put it? In front or in back? Oh, yeah. It took me 2 days to dig which place when we first did it 2 years ago. So actually it should be, of course, it should be straight. Are we done? No. Why we are not done? Because for some reason they decided they don't accept hyphens. So if you do it like this and you put it in your script, which I will show you in the demo, then you will be puzzled why it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you have to delete the hyphens. Okay? So I'm not going to use it, but you in real life you have to delete the hyphens. It works without hyphens. So yeah, to make our life miserable. That's what I think. Okay. Yeah.
So if a bad actor gets a hold of that, is that as bad as them getting the key itself?
It can, well, it's a very good question, and actually, yes. So it's not enough, okay? He has to know other things, but actually it means that he can, the attacker means he hacked Azure, which is supposed to be very secure. And as I said, if I go back now to certificate, I didn't leave the blade. It is still.
But let's say somebody has saved that into Notepad, and then that file gets hacked.
Yeah, no, I'm saving for Notepad for my reasons. Actually, you don't do it, but actually yes, he will need to know other stuff too. But yes, the answer is yes.
But they also need to have access to your Azure account.
Yeah. So they have to have an account ID. So if it's an internal attacker, if you have a mole in your company, yes. If you have someone outside, no.
So I was thinking the application ID was.
No, the application ID is not enough because it also that means it authorizes you to access the key vault, to the specific key vault, but it doesn't give you any permission on the key vault. Your account ID have permission on the key vault. Okay. So one is for access and one is for, so my user is permitted on this key vault. So you have this combination, secret and ACLs, okay, on the account. So let's go back to demonstration. I'm going to show now a step-by-step. I'll talk about the step-by-step process that you will have to do to encrypt a database with TDE in Azure Key Vault. Be patient because there is scripts there. I'm going to show a full demo running the script and I explain everything you have to know. So I'm going to, because each process has a reason and I want to explain what the reason is. So the first step, oh, I'm sorry. I have to switch, yeah. Do you see now? Okay, great. So I don't see because I don't have my glasses. So, as I said, it's complicated to set up TDE with Azure Key Vault. So the first thing you have to do is install SQL Server connector for Azure Key Vault. You just downloaded it, and the latest version is 18 months ago. Well, although there is bugs, some of them I will show you. It wasn't updated for the last 18 months. It have enabled SQL Server to connect to Azure Key Vault seamlessly. It also, for instance, it's very strange that there is another way for SQL Server to connect to Azure Key Vault if you use Always Encrypted. Anyone knows about Always Encrypted? So Always Encrypted means you create when you create a key for encrypt a column, for instance, it's saved you can save it, or it's automatically saved in Azure Key Vault. It does all this magic for you, but it doesn't install anything on your machine. So this one you have to install on the machine. And there is few things with that. After you install that, you need to register, as I said. Azure, yeah.
Still needs access to the internet to access the vault?
Yeah. Otherwise, you need access to Azure. If you don't have access to Azure, basically it means if you already set the TDE and you don't have access, your database will not come up. Okay? It will function until it goes down, but it will not come up. So I'm registering the SQL Server connector as a extensible key manager. Okay? Don't worry about the script. I'll run it with you together. So what happened in AlwaysON? The same thing for each member in AlwaysON, even if it's a machine hosted in Azure in VM or on-premise. Yeah. Like we have, for instance, we have hybrid environment. Which we have a presentation on Friday morning about how to set it up. So it doesn't matter if you use Azure VM or on-premise, you just install the connector, and you can do that with no, there is no order of installation important. So you can do that in which order you want. Okay, then what happened is you create a credential. What is a credential? A credential is basically a security document that says for the only one process that want to consume it, look, I have this user and password or whatever, which we'll see in a minute, and I'm going to connect with you with this credential. A credential doesn't have a meaning if it does not connect it to a user. Also, unfortunately, or by design or because there is no other way, the relation between a credential and the user is one-to-one. So if you create a credential, it can be only for one object. In my case, it's my user in the domain because I'm going to activate all this process. So the first thing you have to do is to assign yourself a credential. And then let's look inside the credential. Okay, the credential states the identity, which is basically the name of the key vault. That's simple. vault.azure.net or whatever, if you're in Germany, government or whatever. Okay, so depends. And the secret is what? What we remember, what we set up, what we built before, or in some cases what your security guy will provide for you. So basically, you don't have to know all these things I showed before, but the security guy or who created the vault and the secret have to provide you this secret. Yes?
Another question. So this is supposed to be separate, right? So the security guy already provided you with the,
Yeah.
the application client ID and the secret.
Yeah. You should.
DBA.
Yeah. But for instance, my security guy, first thing we got in is that we reversed, we did the mixed up. So first was the secret and then the client ID, and then he didn't tell me I have to take out the hyphens. So but yes, in separation of duties, you don't care about the first thing I showed. You just get the secret, okay? You actually don't need to know anything about the key vault, yeah, except the secret.
But this is the application client ID with the secret provided to the DBA. So
Sorry?
I said this is the application client ID with the secret provided to the DBA, right?
Yes.
Security guy. But then right now the DBA has everything. I can install this on another system. I just copy the script.
Correct. Completely.
Right. So how is this separate?
No, separation of details means that the permission on the key vault is given by the security guys or IT guys. It means that this user, Danny RA, has to have permission on the key vault. Okay?
Okay.
It's not enough, because I have to set it up, you have to give me permission. That's the way it works. It means that even if I know the secret, I can't use the key vault if you don't give me permission to access the key vault. The secret is not enough. The secret is just to open the key. But to access the key itself, you have to have permission by the IT guy. So there is total separation. There is no way you can access, even you, as what I'm trying to say is, even I'm a DBA, okay? If I'm getting this permission, let's say for 1 week, just to create this process, the security can remove my permission later after I set it up, okay?
SQL Server will still be working.
Yeah, and we'll show how SQL Server uses different mechanism, which we'll talk about, okay? But very good, thank you. There is few credentials we need to set up, so I'm just showing you how to set up a credential. And of course, I didn't mention you have to connect the credential to the login, okay? So in this case, the login that runs the script create everything. So that's me, okay? But later when we show the full demo, which will not be so far away, we will show what other credentials we need to create. Okay, and eventually we have to create a key to encrypt the data. So what does it mean and what does it mean internally? So I'm creating an asymmetric key. It means if you're familiar with the private key, public key concept, then you know it's basically I'm getting from Azure the private key, putting it inside memory only. It does not, it goes away when SQL Server dies, starts, and the database or the database goes down. It stores it inside memory. In this case, the key name I create an asymmetric key from provider with provider key name means the key I want to use. Okay? And of course, I have to access the key and get the key. It means first time when I'm running this script, I have to have access to the key and unwrap it. So it's not enough you give SQL Server account permission. You have to have this user that's running, the system admin. So someone need to trust someone. And the difference, why I mentioned in this slide there is a new, in SQL Server 2019, something called secure enclaves. Who saw, no, so secure enclaves is something really, really cool. It means I have a machine. I'm a sysadmin, I'm accessing the machine, but I cannot see the memory of the machine is encrypted by default. So revolutionary means that even if I have access to the machine, I can't see the data, this is provided by Intel architecture, which called secure enclaves. And Microsoft supports this with always encrypted. And because we use TDE in this way, it's also supported in TDE. It means that even someone can access the memory of the server or dump the memory, cannot see the key. Okay? And there is another cool thing that some people in the internet already tried. Because it's saved in memory, we can try from outside SQL Server access this key. If you know in which address the key resides, for each database, then you try to access. But when you try to access outside SQL Server, it identifies it immediately because it has a thread that listens on this address, and it kills this database immediately. So it means it shut down the SQL Server, so you don't have to worry about this. What happened in AlwaysON environment? Okay. There is no difference. You can run this, creates symmetrically in all instances with does not matter what is the order. Sorry. Okay, and there is of course there is bugs, and there is an error which is called 2508, which has a lot of meaning behind it, which is 2508, which is the very good explanation why it happens. And after some people in the internet dug up the bug is, and I found this bug because I'm not a sysadmin on the machine I'm using to create the TDE. So what happened is that when you are not sysadmin, Microsoft assumed there is no such thing. So you have to be sysadmin even if you are not, to use a SQL Server connector. The bug is in the SQL Server connector. So you have to create your own. You have to use regedit and add this path. SQL Server cryptographic provider must exist in the node local machine, software, Microsoft, SQL Server cryptographic provider with nothing under there. Once you've created this, then the error will disappear. So did you guys understand, or you have any questions about that? Okay, so it's important because that's when you, unfortunately, it's not fixed. So the latest version is 15.0396. It's still there, which is unfortunate. But you have to have, if you are not sysadmin, you have to check. If the path exists in the regedit, it means it's not the problem. There is something else is not working. Yes, Yitzhak.
You have to be
No, you don't have to. That's the funny thing. The funny thing that it lets you, if you are allowed to install software on the machine, I mean, if for instance a VM, then later you open their management studio and connect, yeah, and you can install SQL Server connector even if you are not sysadmin.
When you create the credentials, you have to be sysadmin?
No, you just have to have the pod in regedit. You don't have to be sysadmin. Good question, though.
You can't use it unless you're sysadmin, right?
Sorry?
You can't really encrypt a database unless you're sysadmin.
No, I mean, sysadmin is Windows sysadmin.
Oh,
Okay, and you can. If you're a database owner, you can. You don't have to be sysadmin. You have all this permission you need, but you have to have permission to create asymmetric key. You need to set permission, but you don't have to be sysadmin of SQL Server, SA, okay? When I'm saying sysadmin, I'm talking about Windows sysadmin. Good remark. Yeah. If someone can pass her. It's a medium. I hope it's not too big. Okay. So so Microsoft, when it started to talk about encryption TDE with Azure Key Vault, had a problem. So if I have a user that accesses Key Vault and gets a private key, then anyone can do that. So what is the solution? So after all these complicated things we need to do, there is another one, which means we need to create a user without login. In this case, it's a user from an asymmetric key. Okay, so in order to have the process of SQL Server when it starts, and you have a TDE database, what it has to do? It has to go to Azure Key Vault, retrieve the private key, put it in memory, and start decrypting the data. So what happens is that it has to have a mechanism that you as sysadmin cannot do. And what is that? A user without login, a user with an asymmetric key. So if you remember, the command run as. Okay, so you cannot run as this user. That's inherited in SQL Server security. So you cannot impersonate, okay, this user. That's why it exists. So after I created credential for each one of the users I want to use, then I have to create a user without login. And I have to add the credential for this and I have to create specific credential for this user because the credential only belongs to one entity. So for each one of these guys, I have to create the same credential all over again with different names. Everybody's okay with that? Okay, so finally, we create the database. The first time we go to the database, we create the database encryption key from the asymmetric key we created before, yeah? Sorry. Yeah, we create here the database encryption key, and then we are setting the database encryption to on. It means the database is going to be encrypted. So let's see all this in how it works. Any questions before I start the demo? Okay, nobody wants a t-shirt? Okay, wow.
Question, can you use express routes to connect into the Azure?
Yeah, of course you can. That's okay. No. Doesn't matter how you connect. If you use express route or not, that's not an issue with. Okay, so I'm going in. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate everything I talked about until now. Yeah, and I'm going to now configure show advanced option EKM provider. I'm registering the EKM provider. I didn't clean machine after I did that. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to clean everybody. Clean the thingy. Okay, doesn't matter. Some errors because something did not exist. Anyway, so I'm going to do that. And it is created, and then I'm going to set create cryptographic provider, and you see the file is C program files. That is the default. If you, of course, need to change the script, because if you are install it in different place, then it won't work for you. Okay, so now I'm going to create a database to encrypt. So the database doesn't have any objects. That's on purpose. Want it to work fast. So first thing I'm going to do is create a credential that I'm going to use with my user. Okay? And then I'm going to create another credential which I'm going to use with which user access eventually the Key Vault when it runs without. So the service account, correct. So the service account eventually runs a SQL Server, which is called in this case Danny RA domain. Okay, I have two users here which I have to put the credential. One is my user that runs now, and the second one is the service account. So this is the two things you have to do, service account and your user running this script. Okay, and then I'm going to just create the asymmetric key to encryption. So I'm going to provide the, as you remember you saw in Azure portal. Okay, so this is the hardest part. If it passes, then you can, okay? It completes successfully, which took me 150 times to try in the first times. Then you're all set. Then everything works. I connect to Azure Key Vault, retrieve the key, put it inside the memory. Everything, I had permission for everything, and so forth and so forth. So now I'm also, remember, I have to have the SQL Server process accessing the Key Vault. So what I'm going to do is exactly as I showed before. I'm going to create the login from the asymmetric key that I created before. And again, I have to create a credential for this guy. And then I have to attach them both by alter login at credential. So now we're all set to encrypt the database. Okay? So the first step is to create the database encryption key. So, sorry. Yeah, I have to, that's why I created it, and now I don't. Okay, I think it's finished correctly. So if we go to database encryption keys, we should see that TempDB has suddenly a key, and this is not the database that I tried before. Doesn't matter. Why TempDB is inside this? Anyone have any idea? Yeah, if as someone said here, which the last shirt, I don't know where it was. So I don't know. No, she said that the TempDB must be encrypted. Otherwise, you can access temporary tables that created inside this database. So TempDB must be encrypted too. So it is automatically encrypted even though you don't say it. So if you have a single database inside your instance that is going to be encrypted, TempDB will automatically be encrypted too. So slow performance? Yes. How much? Well, depends. Okay, so I've set encryption keys, but if you see, there is something I forgot to talk about. Yeah, there is encryption state. So encryption state for TempDB is always 3, almost always. It means finished, encryption finished, or decryption finished. So in TDE, which it's 1, it means database is not encrypted. So when I create a database key, it doesn't mean it's already encrypted. It is the process. So, and it's an online process. It means it encrypts entire database on its own time. So in this case, we don't have anything inside the database. So if I'm going to encrypt the database by set encryption on, yeah, then actually it's going to be state 3. So there is three states. 1 is not encrypted, 2 is in process, and 3 is encrypted. And if you are in 2 process, how can you know how much of your database is encrypted? It will be in the %complete column.
I can still access the data.
Of course, otherwise. Bleh. So you encrypt a production database, there is no downtime. There is some slowness, depends how busy is your database, and also, there is some, and you need to understand that if it is big, the bigger the database, the longer the process. It can take few hours for medium database, like 1-2 terabytes, up to days. Okay? You can stop the process anytime. It's recoverable. Okay? So it means you don't need to. I mean, if the database goes down, it will continue doing it will not continue doing the process, but you can set the statement again to continue encrypting.
If your server goes down and comes up, the database is in recovery?
The database will not be in recovery. It will be recovered. It will be recovered with no effects of encryption. But part of it will be encrypted, part of it not encrypted. You have to go, if you are not aware that an encryption process is on the way, it's a tough luck. But you will have to set the command again to continue encrypting. It will not start itself. Okay, so what you guys think about what you need? As we spoke, our company is strict to have strict rules, and we have to use key rotation. And the problem is that magically some people think that key rotation is very simple. You just change the key and SQL Server will do it for you. So the process is, what do you think the process is? Oh, it's written here. So the process is actually decrypting the database and re-encrypting it with a different key. Okay, so we have a very small database. So I'm going to create, I created another key in Key Vault, or my security guy created. I'm just creating an async symmetrically inside the database, which I call the encrypt key 2. This is the key I'm going to use. And it's because I created it. It already exists, sorry. So now I need to create a login from asymmetric key, and then I will.
I think you have to be a master. Go back up.
Yeah, you're right.
Your TDE.
Yeah. You see, I have my own script and I'm doing my own mistakes, even though I've already done it before. Okay, great. I love this part. Okay, so I create the login and then I edit the credential. You know, I have to create a new credential because it's a different key, which you also have to take you a long time to understand that. Why? That's the way it works. So I'm going to add the credential to the login. I'm going to create database encryption key. Okay. And I can't be in sysmaster. I have to be in the database, which again, thank you very much. Oh, okay. And then when you get this, you start to understand that you have to decrypt the database before you encrypt it again. So what I'm going to do is very easy. I'm going to set encryption off. And when I'm setting encryption off, I need to make sure after that I'm in encryption state 1. And then I'm going to drop the first key. And actually, it is a problem because what regulation says is there is no time when your database needs to be unencrypted. Okay, and we tell them, okay, tell Microsoft that. We're very happy, thank you.
Now, could you, did it show TempDB is still encrypted?
Yeah. Why? You know why? Because this database is encrypted.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Okay. Good question. I have no shirts. Okay, so I'm now creating the new key, and that's the same process as before. It now goes to Azure and retrieved it and put it inside memory. Sorry, I ran it again. And then I'm just setting database encryption on, and oh, I managed to put it in 2. So if we run this again, it should be 3, of course. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's the whole thing. Yes?
So you had originally created 3 different credentials, right? One for your user, or main user. When you recreated it, you only recreated one of the credentials. Was that on purpose, or would you actually need in real life?
No. Okay, I explain why. So when I created the first 3, so one for me, one for by the way, every user that wants to run the script has to have this credential, and one the account, the service account, yeah, that runs SQL Server. Also, the internal process have to have a login. If you create a new key, it has to have a different credential. Okay, so I created a new key. I have to create a new login for it. It doesn't work if you don't create a new login for it. It seems that it's stupid, yeah, but it's not. Okay, that's the way it works. So you have to. So this time I have to create just for the second login because I already have for the service account. Okay, because the secret if you notice, the secret does not change. Okay, but secret is related to the application. The secret did not change because the same application is accessing me. Okay, so that's okay. So let me switch back to number 3. Okay, so there is a couple of things you have to remember. First thing, you have to have constant access to Azure Key Vault. Not necessarily. It means, for instance, we work in a production environment. Our databases are up months. So only when the database goes up or SQL Server goes up, doesn't matter if SQL Server down, your whole database is down, yeah? So when it tries to access the database and decrypt it, it has to go to Azure Key Vault. So if you don't have access to this region, there is now a new feature, you can use multi-region Azure Key Vault. Yeah, it will retry it automatically for you. It's transparent to you. It will go to another region where you backed up your Azure Key Vault.
So you mean at startup when the database
Yeah.
but not while it's running. Once it's done at that one time, it's good to go for
Yeah. So when as I said, yes, correct. If the database SQL Server is up, database is up, nothing happens. Azure, there is no access to Azure, there is no problem. Okay? Only when it started. Yeah. But there is a caveat to this. When you use AlwaysON, okay? Which is as follows. If you use AlwaysON and you don't use the failover, you just start and stop on the same server, yeah? And your other server doesn't have access, or for instance, for some reason you didn't create the keys on all nodes, this process I said 1 to 5, you have to create on all servers. Let's say you forgot to do it on one server and you fail over. What will happen? The database will not come up, okay? It will give you encryption key, this and this, what we said that does not exist on the server. So you have to be sure that when you use even if you, for instance, have a problem in networking, so it immediately SQL Server shuts down. For instance, the server that is not connected to the internet, yeah, it has to have access to when it comes back online with the AlwaysON group. So AlwaysON have to, all database in all the nodes must have access to Azure Key Vault. It's not enough. What? Okay. Okay. So good question. The problem is that backup the keys is not your issue. Okay? So if you don't back up the keys, and I don't know, maybe your IT guys are not so strict, that's a problem. Okay? So it means that the definition of the key is gone. It means what you have to do is decrypt the database, drop the key, create a new key. That means that you have to decrypt all databases that use this key vault. Okay? So you need to make sure the keys are backed up and your key vault is backed up. And usually it's not your responsibility. Also, there is, as I said, there is a very important thing, okay? Never, ever, and you have to state this for your security guys, create a new version for a key used in SQL Server. So previously, in SQL Server 2016, Service Pack 1, you lose the database. Basically, your database is corrupted. The reason is because SQL Server connector was not created for, we don't understand what is new version. So it tries to bring the old version, which currently says in Azure Key Vault says it's deprecated. And what happens is he tries to use the new key and he can't decrypt the data. So they provided now a mechanism that doesn't basically you can set permission not to create new version, but it's not a foolproof. Other things that is amazing, that if you have a database offline, for instance, I take offline database that is encrypted by TDE, then from some crazy reason you can drop the key. So if you try to do it in SQL Server to a database encrypted with key in SQL Server, it will not let you do that because say database you have a database that is encrypted by this key. Here you can just drop the key. So and if you drop the key, you don't have. You try to set online, then you don't have. What it means that you have to be crazy to do that, but it is possible. And there is some people on the internet already encounter that. The way but you can recover from that if you create the key again. So
So with Azure Key Vault, you drop the key and that's the same thing as decrypting the database?
no, there is no connection between these two objects. The one doesn't aware on the operations on the second. So your sysadmin or some crazy reason other one drops the key vault. Then the only way to recover from this is decrypting the database. There is no automatic anything.
But would you need access to the Key Vault to decrypt the database?
No. No, you have to.
Okay, as long as it has installed. So
No, it means to decrypt. There is no. Well, actually,
If they drop
well,
the vault and the database,
I didn't try that, but I'm starting to suspect that there is an issue here.
You couldn't mount the database without
Yeah.
the vault, so
Yeah, that's there is okay.
So I was trying to discern whether to go with an HSM or the software-based key generation. And if you generate your own keys using HSM or just create your certificate file, whatever, then yeah, you can import that into a new key vault. If you drop the old key vault, you can import. We had that
Okay.
because we were moving from one subscription to another subscription, and AKV won't migrate to another subscription. So that's
Good.
one of the key things.
Thank you, sir.
Manage your own keys. Use either an HSM or
Okay, good point. I don't have a shirt. Yitzhak, you can give him his own shirt. Yeah. So tell me your name.
Sergio.
Sergio. So Sergio said that I didn't know that you can migrate your keys if you use HSM. You can migrate to another subscription or basically restore
To another key vault,
or whatever.
wherever it is.
Okay. So the issue is what happens if you create your keys outside of this domain of Azure, It means what happens if you create a PFX file in some certificate authority. Okay? You have to have a separate backup. So this is not your responsibility, but I don't know if it's allowed to spell the word. Happens, you know. Okay?
Do you recommend that when you create like a key vault, always with the option soft delete, just in case it's a mistakenly delete the key vault, you can still like cover.
This is exactly what Sergio said.
So it's the same.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah, it's true. Yeah, but as I see that there is some organization, the DBA is also the security administrator, but that's really rare. But usually, you know, when you're in a big company, you are not doing this. But what you need to make sure that you take that from this presentation, just give a list to this guy, just check this, make sure there is a backup. I will be surprised if there is no backup to a Key Vault. I'm sure there is.
The way I understood it was, if you go to Key Vault, it says backup the key. But that backup is only
For the key.
relevant for that Key Vault.
Yes.
So if you try and take that backup and restore it to another Key Vault,
No.
it won't work.
You have to, the backup, the key has a signature that is relying on this Key Vault. Yeah, we already found that out. So only if you use HSM and also or option, then you can restore it to another Key Vault. Okay, is that, yes, sir.
One clarification, this whole Azure Key Vault and the demonstration you did today, your databases on your server doesn't have to be in Azure. They could be local.
It's local.
Right, this is just getting the Azure.
No, what I showed you is on my machine.
Right, okay, good. I just want to make sure.
No. The Key Vault here is so easy to use.
Right,
If you take the caveat, so it's for me like a store, which always there, and I use it on my premise.
yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So obviously, if it's in Azure, what do you do when your SQL server can't connect to the internet? Do you recommend like a proxy server in between or something like that if it can't?
No, I recommend. I don't recommend anything that will enable this thing to happen, like express route. Always, as people said here, all this morning presentation by Kumar, as he said, we're trying to make 100% uptime. That's the whole reason of you using Azure. If that's not there, if the Key Vault is not there, then a lot of people have a problem. But you can't, if you don't have access and you start restarting SQL Server, there's not actually anything you can do until Azure will be available. Nothing.
No, I guess what my question
Okay, I'm sorry.
how do you broker it if by default your SQL server isn't open to the extra, like it's.
You have to open it.
You just have to open.
No, there is no way you cannot yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any way around like not creating the key on the SQL server and just like trustworthy in the Azure Key Vault?
That's exactly what happened behind the scene. No, there is not. Because actually what happens is that the private key is wrapped with the Key Vault protection. You get the unwrapped permission to get the key, there's the private key, put it inside your memory, and it's not saved anywhere. And you cannot access it, as I explained why. There is protection mechanism. But you have to have the private key in order to encrypt the database. You can't use you can use another key, but it will be very weak. So the other option they have is to use a symmetric key and protect it with the encryption key. That's not what's going on. I also thought that the Azure Key Vault is just the public key that just encrypts the local symmetric key. That's not what's happening. Sorry. Yeah.
I have a compliance question. So do you think that the security team, they create the key vaults, should also provide a key, say, to a DBA for them to add the key to the SQL server or SQL management instance? Because right now, I'm working on the automate provisioning a SQL database. So what they asked me to do, I add the key to SQL Server, this or SQL database at the time of deployment. So basically, in my script,
Just a second.
yeah.
To do what? You add the key in the deployment to do what?
To the SQL database. Actually, we don't add to the database, so we add to the SQL server.
Yeah, to the master, basically, yeah.
Yeah, to the master.
S-
Yeah,
and-
for the TDE.
Okay.
So, so right now, so I'm creating the key in an existing key vault. So they basically provide me the key vaults, but I have to create.
What do you mean? You're doing create key on the key vault with PowerShell, for instance, or something, yeah?
Yeah, I create a
Yeah.
key and then add the key to the SQL.
And this is why you need to do that.
My question is, this is a compliances. This is not.
No, I don't think so.
So there's.
We really I don't think so.
Yeah, like I'm doing like a being your own key, not like doing the way you do. You just present. Yeah.
I see. Let's talk about it later because it's a different thing. Bring your own key is a different thing, and it means that you create the key yourself, not bring the key, and not that's a different, and it doesn't work in this. You can't use bring your own key with this as far as I understand. No, you can bring your own key. You can create it in Key Vault, but you can't. You don't generate. You import it. The only difference is that you import the key. But let's talk later. Yeah. Okay, after the class. Yeah. So,
Licensing for the access to the Azure Key Vault, is there licensing?
no, there is price. It's very you pay for the Key Vault and per access, number of access. I'm not familiar totally with the money, but it's not
Not free, but it's not.
it's not a thing.
And then like 10 cents per 10,000.
It's really it's not always it's not really small dollars. Yeah.
If you're trying to restore it to a different server, does that server also need all these setup?
Yes. Yes, but it doesn't. You create. You run the same script on all servers, so that's the good thing. You don't need because the key itself is on Key Vault. That's a good thing that people need to remember that when you install SQL Server, it creates its own service master key. So if you have your own service master key, the difference in different databases, that might be an issue. For instance, in AlwaysON, but it's not an issue in this case because the key is an Azure Key Vault.
And after rotating the key to a different key, your backups now are using a different key, right?
Correct. Your backups, no, your backups, it depends. Either you can encrypt also your backups. That's a different thing. Your backups are backing up an encrypted database. Okay? Does the backup encrypt it? No.
The backup is
What?
encrypted, but
Your
it's
backup
not.
is encrypted with TDE. It's not an encrypted backup.
Okay.
It's a backup of encrypted data.
Okay, so what you're saying is, okay, I'm not sure which version of SQL. Okay, I need to check that, but I believe you. No, what do you mean? You mean you can restore them because you can have the key. What?
You have to have a restore policy or a backup procedure for your.
Good question. You have, yeah. No, the question is also how much data you have to save, and what is exactly the today.
You have to have policies that make it work for you. You have to both restore and backup, so you've got the
Yeah.
proper key at the proper time.
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't work automatically with it. Yeah, that's one. As that's a separation thing. Yeah, that's an issue. Good thing. I didn't think about that. Okay, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much.